Hello, everyone, and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. My name's Liam. I'm your host, and I am doing my weekly update for the 3rd of February. It's February already, 2024. This is Liam's Leapings number 74. I don't know if that's as in focus as it could be. There we go. And I'm just going to tell you the books I read this week. I don't think I wrote anything. I wrote one poem that might have been at the end of last week, though. I'm having a hard time remembering. But I did finish 4 books this week, and I read a decent chunk of some other books. So the first book I finished was Shadows of Sanctuary, edited by Robert Lynn Aspirin, and Lynn Abbey as well, though she doesn't get credit on the old versions. This is book 3 in Thieves World. Probably the last one you could read, just like without having read the previous ones. I think in the 4th one is where it gets more entwined in previous stories, and the stories start getting a little different. So you could definitely start with the second one. You can start with the first one. You can start with the third one. There's no real reason not to start with the first one, which is just called Thieves World. And I read that one a while ago. It was a buddy read, actually, and I don't think anyone joined me for it, but it was one of my channel buddy reads, which is half the reason I stopped doing my channel buddy reads. But maybe people will join me now that I have more subscribers. But I really enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to Storm Season. There's like 7 stories in here. 5 are actually by women and 2 are by men. And my least favorite is probably the Andrew Offutt one. My favorite one, it's really a toss-up. I'm not sure. There's just so many good ones. I like Lynn Abbey's a lot. Vonda McIntyre's is good. Diana Paxton's was good. Robert Aspirin's was good too. CJ Cherry, she opens it, also really good. So I mean, there's a lot of good ones in here. I wasn't a fan of Janet Morris's as much this time around. Andrew Offutt's and Janet Morris's are probably my least favorite. Though Janet Morris's, I think, probably was my favorite in book 2. So, but yeah, good stuff. I like the Velez artwork as well. And then I also finished Midnight at the Well of Souls by Jack L. Chalker. This is a weird book, and maybe it's a spoiler, but like apparently multiple people have told me now that Chalker's shtick is like transformation, like metamorphosis. There's a character who starts the story as a woman, ends up becoming a centaur, like a human woman, ends up becoming a centaur, and then ends up becoming a man at the end of the book, which I know is a spoiler. All right, but I'm sorry. That's just like that just kind of is an example of some of the stuff. And there's other odder transformations in some ways as well. Hers is just, I don't know, these stepping stones, I guess. So it's a really weird story. I do want to read more of the Wells of Souls books. This does work as a standalone though. I think the next one's called Exodus from the Well of Souls. I'm not really sure. I know the next one is doesn't work as a standalone. Like you need to read books 2 and 3. Basically, those two go together. So, but at some point I'll read that. I had this for a while. I think this is the first edition actually, but I've had this one for a while. My older brother, we had recently read Ringworld, and he had heard this as something similar-ish to Ringworld, and is actually in some ways is similar. To try out, and it took me forever, but I'm glad I got to it because it was entertaining, to say the least. So, and then the 3rd book I finished was Cormier, one I'd been reading for a few weeks. This is by Ed Greenwood and Jeff Grubb, and this is an epic Forgotten Realms novel. They're generally not this thick. This is almost 500 pages, and it's also an epic because it's essentially telling you the foundation myth of Cormier. All right, myth not meaning false, but just story here, right? And which is what epics are. And so it's cool because you get a lot of stuff that's happening in the present of Cormier at the time this is written. That's like 1369 DR. It's over 100 years ago from when present Dungeons and Dragons stuff is, but we'll just act like that doesn't exist. And also like stuff that was happening over 1,000 years ago, right? When the country hadn't been founded, when dragons were living there, when elves were living there, and then when men came, and how that kind of happened, and then some crises throughout its history to show basically that the current crisis is not really, the one and only crisis they've ever gone through. The country is really old; it's over 1,000 years old. So, Cormier is one of my favorite countries. In fact, I'll be running a D&D session for my brother's set in Cormier on Sunday now, so very appropriate. They were just like, I want to play D&D, and they were like, hey, Liam, you haven't DM'd for a while, which is funny because last time we played D&D, I DM'd. They just don't remember that. Or they remember now because I reminded them. But we hadn't played D&D since August. We've been playing like Call of Cthulhu and stuff. So I very much enjoyed this one. I will mention that I'm reading the book 2 right now in the series. I'm not enjoying it as much, and I think that's partially because of the author. I'll talk about that when I get to that book. And then the 4th book I finished, I read this largely in 2 days. I started Monday, and I was almost done with it by the end of Tuesday. I did finish it Wednesday. I had to work Wednesday, so Wednesday night after work, I finished the very end of it. But that's King's Dragon by Kate Elliott. And I know Raph, he mentioned her, that epic fantasy in a lot of ways is dominated by men still. And he's not wrong. I'd say in the 80s and 90s, you got a lot more women writing fantasy in general, epic fantasy in particular, because Sword and Sorcery is largely dead in the 80s and 90s. And so this is one of those big series that started coming out in the late 90s. It's Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott. This came out in 97, I think. I'd read this one before. I've read King's Dragon, okay? I read this right after I finished Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. I had just finished Legend, and then I read this, and then the book I finished after reading King's Dragon was The Curse of Chalion. And Legend is an awesome standalone fantasy novel, and The Curse of Chalion is an amazing standalone fantasy novel. And I read this, and then for some reason, I kind of got in a slump. And that doesn't have anything to do with this book because I really enjoyed rereading it. And I don't reread much, but I decided to reread it because I want to finish the series. I want to continue the series. So book 2 is Prince of Dogs. Nico from Nico's Book Reviews is holding a read-along. This was January, so I did finish it on the 31st. So I finished it in January, and now I have to read Prince of Dogs in February. So I'm looking forward to Prince of Dogs. It's about the same size as this one. I actually really like the cover for King's Dragon. Some of the other ones, they're a little but King's Dragon, I think, looks really cool. So, but I might have a review out early for this one, just because it's part of the read-along. We'll see. I really enjoyed the reread, though. I remembered a decent amount of it, but I forgot a lot of it as well. So I'm kind of glad I did the reread. So now I'm ready for Prince of Dogs, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm not always excited in the recent years for epic fantasy, but this was good. I enjoyed it a lot. So another book I've been reading this week, and I'm actually almost done. I only have one chapter left, is Ellis Peters' One Corpse Too Many. If you've been watching my channel, you might remember last year I read the first book in this series. This is the Codville Chronicles. They're murder mysteries during the Anarchy, so 12th century England. The first book actually largely takes place in Wales, but that one's a lot more cozy in some ways because this is like in the full swing of the Anarchy. The Anarchy has come to town essentially, and 94 men were defending the castle, and they got hanged for it. And there's one other corpse among those bodies. There's 95 corpses, so one corpse too many. We have to figure out how he was murdered. I like how Ellis Peters, who's actually a pen name for Edith, like Pargeter or something like that. She does a really good job with her characters, and she always has younger characters. With Brother Codville, who's this old, he's a retired crusader almost, right? He's a monk now. Kind of reminds me of Gaius of Merlin because he works in this garden, right, with plants and stuff. So not quite a physician, I guess, but he does help people with like medicine and stuff like that. And I just really like Brother Codville's character. And I'm really looking forward to reading more of these, and there's a number of them. So this is only book 2. Maybe I might even finish this one tonight. I'm enjoying it. So we know who the murderer is right now, but we don't know how justice will be done. So I will find out tonight. I'm excited. Another book I think I started just this last week is The Barbed Coil by J.B. Jones. I mentioned I got this, I think, last week in my book haul. Here's the book cover. Maybe I started reading it last week. I can't remember. I'm 160 pages in, which isn't bad. This is the main book I'd focus on reading physically. These other ones were like on Kindle and stuff. But I think now I'm going to do a buddy read, so this will probably be put on hold for a few weeks. There is an audiobook that was shared with me by Terry. I think Terry from Australia, right? If I remember correctly. That's heavily abridged, though, and like dramatized. Heavily abridged, though. So I think I'll just continue reading this. when I get the chance. But now I'll probably turn on to reading The Buried Giant with T. But I am enjoying it. It's portal fantasy, but also epic fantasy, right? So you get a lot of your typical fantasy stuff, but the main character is from San Fran- San Francisco, San Diego. That's what it is. So yeah, and then I did read a little bit more in Don Quixote. Not much. I don't have really anything else to add to it at this point. On page 247 in my copy. Going very slowly through this. I haven't spent much time of late actually going through this. So, and then make sure. Oh, the Book of Three still. I'm reading that with my girls. And then one other book I did read some today. I'm not quite halfway through. That's Beyond the High Road. So this is book 2 in the Cormyr saga. There's 3 authors for the Cormyr saga, right? You have 2 of them in the first book, Ed Greenwood and Jeff Grubb. Then you have Troy Denning, who is the author of book 2. And he's also the co-author with Ed Greenwood in book 3, which I imagine will be better. I'm not enjoying this. It has some interesting stuff. My main annoyance, I like how Tanalasta's kind of coming into herself. You get hints of that in the first book. She's the crown princess. I don't think that's even her on the cover, though. It's probably Alice there. But she's still kind of annoying in a lot of ways. It's told in third person, but her opinion of Vanji or Vandragatahas, whatever. Vandragatahas, is that his name? Yeah, I think I just call him Vanji. I don't feel like Troy Denning likes him, right? Because like it's told in third person, right? And so like it just feels like Denning doesn't like the wizard, the royal wizard of Cormyr, rather than just Tanalasta, right? It's kind of, if you've ever read Karen Travis's Halo novels, you can tell Karen Travis does not like the character of Dr. Halsey at all, basically. That's worse than this. This is just, again, I don't think Denning likes Vanji for some reason. But it's not terrible. It's not bad. But Tanalasta is definitely the main character in this, while Vanji was really the main character of book 1. So yeah, it's got like terrible art. I don't know, but it's kind of endearing to me. I like it kind of, even though it's awful. Um, it's really bad, but I like it. So, and then the last thing to mention this week, I guess, since I'll try not to ramble about anything, is I finally got the Bhagavad Gita from Uppsala Books. They were kind enough to send me a copy. I will mention this. Actually, I just came out a video on Wednesday on Winters in the World by Eleanor Parker. That's like my first video where I focused on an academic or scholarly work. I had made a short about the previous Uppsala book publication, Beowulf's Commentary and Translation, by Dr. Shippey and Leonard Nydorf. And but I'll probably won't just make a short for this. I might end up making a short for this. Who knows? It's not very long. But hopefully I'll make a video like I did for Winters in the World. That's not a very popular video, I should say. That I'm not surprised, but that is a very unpopular video, like as far as views go. And the one the week before that is also very much not popular, which is similar. It's not quite an academic work, but it's a medieval work. And I was like, these aren't going to be popular, but I want to talk about them. And now I'm faced with the dilemma of actually, I have no clue what my Wednesday video is going to be for this Wednesday. I have a couple ideas. I've been meaning to ask some authors, in particular Howard Andrew Jones, to come on my channel, and also Erin M. Evans. I would like to ask her to see if she would come on. She's got 2 books coming up to be released here in the next few months. I think first part of the year is both of them, actually. But and I'm a big fan of her writing. I've read every book she's published so far. So I haven't been able to get arcs of those books yet, though. If anyone can help me out there. But yeah, I some good stuff coming. I just don't know. I'm just kind of lost with motivation on what sounds like a good idea right now. You know, I'm sure there's some ideas that sounded good before and will probably sound good later, but right now, I don't know. I have no clue what to do for Wednesday. In fact, I might not have a Wednesday video. We'll see. So, anyways, I hope y'all have been doing good. I'm tired. It's my 3rd day of work this week. 12-hour shifts. Got another one tomorrow. So, wish me luck. And I look funny. I know. My hair is too wet still, so it doesn't look good when it's wet. And my beard is big, though I did trim it a little. Anyways, I'm rambling. I said I wouldn't do that. Anyways, I'll catch you next time.